Hey there, and welcome to SI Now. It's Wednesday, November 16th, and I'm Ryan Aselta. We've got a solid mix of pigskin and round ball for you this afternoon. We're going to hit the budding feud between LeBron James and Phil Jackson and focus on a special report in this week's Sports Illustrated about the state of football in America. And that's where we begin, in the NFL, where Monday the Giants improved to 6-3 on the season and continue to quietly remain contenders in a loaded NFC East. Yesterday, Giants wideout Victor Cruz joined our Maggie Gray direct from MetLife Stadium to talk football and more, courtesy of Toyota. Let's go places.
All right, Victor, we know the Giants pulled off a one-point victory on Monday Night Football, but unfortunately, you were forced to watch from the sideline with an ankle injury. Can we expect to see you this weekend against Chicago?
Absolutely. I think that's the plan. Obviously, it's going to take a good, solid week of practice for me to really put the ankle to the test, but I feel great today. Unfortunately, I couldn't go last night, and it pained me not to be able to play on Monday Night Football, but obviously there's a long season, and I'm excited for my chances on Sunday.
Okay, I still want to ask you about the game, though, because I'm curious if you were surprised that Ben McAdoo decided to go for the touchdown on 4th down at the beginning of the fourth quarter rather than kicking the field goal. Big risk-reward play that paid off for the Giants. What message did McAdoo send with that call?
I think the message he sent was that he trusts us. I think he trusts his teammates and he trusts his team, rather, and he trusts Eli Manning with the ball and the decision-making that he's going to make. And I think that's what it is. And I think when we see that, we want to repay him. We want to raise our level of play because he trusts us so much in making those calls. So obviously it's, to the outside looking in, it's a little bit risky, but to us, it's something that we want to rise up and really make the play that's going to put this team over the edge on a circumstance like that on 4th down.
3 weeks ago, does Coach make that same call, or has the team proven something to him lately?
I think it's tough to say that, it's tough to call, but I think 3 weeks ago he makes that call. I think he still understands the type of team that he has and the type of guys that are on this team and the type of character guys that are on this team and guys that'll just go out there and play and guys that'll make plays for him. And I think that's what he sees when he looks at us, at least offensively, and we want to just continue that trend.
Victor, it wasn't long ago that Odell was taking heat for his actions on the sidelines. Eli said he needed to grow up. McAdoo called him a distraction. From your vantage point, has Beckham changed?
I mean, yeah, but he's always been this great kid. I think it's just a matter of, things that have gone on throughout the season that may have depicted him a different way. But he's always been a great kid that understands the game. And I think he shifted his mindset to understand what he's going to be facing week in and week out. And I think coming into games with that understanding has helped him be a better player and a better athlete. So I think he understands it now, and I think he just has to continue to push forward because obviously he's a huge factor while we're winning ball games and making some good things happen out there.
We saw him in the end zone doing the Thriller dance. So salsa or Thriller, what's the better dance, Victor?
Oh, man, it's tough to tell because the salsa is just so iconic. You know what I mean? It's just such an iconic dance. But Thriller's not a bad runner-up, to say the least, because Michael Jackson's he was a pretty popular guy.
Okay, maybe we'll see you make a switch at some point when you come back off that ankle injury. Is there another receiver that Sterling Shepard reminds you of?
It's tough to tell. It's funny because when he came in, people were making that comparison to myself when I was a young, early riser in my early years. So I think he has a lot of that, and I think he just, he's his own guy. I think he understands route running. I think he understands how to catch the football. I think he's going to be a tremendous receiver for us down the line, and I think it's good to have him, and he's getting better as these weeks go on.
2011 was the last time we saw the Giants in the postseason. Now the team's 6-3. How much confidence is in that locker room to end that playoff drought?
A lot of confidence. We understand all the statistics and all the, the last time we were in the Super Bowl and the playoffs and all of that. So we want to change that. We want to get this city back into the playoffs. We want to get these fans back into a playoff-type atmosphere and be excited for their team again in the postseason. So we're taking a one week at a time approach. But that's definitely, in the back of our minds as we progress here in this season.
Got to ask you about an opponent, Cowboys. They've been one of the biggest surprises of the year. They lead the division with a record of 8-1. I'm just curious, how shocked are you at how well the rookies are playing, Dak Prescott and Ezekiel Elliott?
Obviously, initially, you're a little shocked because they're rookies and you don't know what to expect for them. You think they're going to have a little bit of a learning curve coming in. But those guys have exceeded expectations and are playing above the X's and O's. And, we just got to be able to be ready once that time comes for us to play against them, essentially, which might be for all the marbles in the NFC East. But we just have to be ready. And I think, those rookies aren't rookies anymore. At this point, they're seasoned guys that have got enough games under their belt to be comfortable, and we just have to treat them that way.
Victor, we know you express yourself when you get into the end zone every time doing the salsa dance. It's a tribute to your grandmother, but now fans are able to express themselves as they're watching the game moment by moment, if they'd like to, with fan emojis. Can you tell us about them?
Absolutely. Toyota fan emojis is just a cool way to interact with your friends throughout the game. I mean, if Odell scores a touchdown, you can send a lightning feet emoji or fire coming out from the feet emoji to your friends. If we kick a field goal to win the game, you can send the ball going through the uprights that indicate we won the game. Or if a guy, another guy scores a touchdown, you have a guy, you can send them of him with his hands raised indicating a touchdown also. So there's so many different emojis and fan emojis that go along with this, and it's just being able to interact with your friends in a cool way throughout the game, good, bad, or indifferent. You just want to poke fun. It's all good stuff. So Toyota fan emojis, they're in your app store, and they go right to your keyboard.
Do you have an emoji or a fan emoji you find that you send more often than any other?
I send the first down one is kind of my favorite. It's just understanding that that's what I do. That's what we do as receivers. We want to move those chains, and the first down one is definitely my favorite.
Mine's the nachos. Not that shocking. Victor Cruz, Victor, thanks a lot. We wish you the best of luck and hope to see you on the field soon.
No problem. Thank you very much.
All right, now to the NBA, where there's a new feud brewing between the King and the Zen Master. LeBron James has said he's lost respect for Knicks president Phil Jackson after Jackson used the word posse to describe LeBron's business associates. For more on this and the rest of the association, let's welcome in SI NBA writer Ben Golliver. And Ben, when you first heard about this story and Jackson's choice of words, did you think he had crossed the line here?
Well, I can understand why he might wonder, hey, what's the big fuss? But I can also understand why LeBron James and Maverick Carter didn't like the use of the word posse. I think this is really a case of terrible timing, right? I mean, it's coming right after the election, an election season in which LeBron James actively campaigned against Donald Trump, an election season that saw some really loaded terminology used towards African Americans and African American communities. And to me, this whole situation looks like LeBron saying enough is enough. If someone's going to be talking about me in ways that I don't feel are appropriate, I'm going to take a stand and say something. I'm not just going to let that happen. And so for Phil Jackson, this now becomes this giant distraction for the Knicks, which he probably never saw coming.
Do you think LeBron was most upset about the posse comment or Jackson's claims that LeBron requires special treatment that other players don't get?
I think it's a little bit of both. And also, as Carmelo said, why is Phil Jackson even talking about LeBron James right now at this point of the season? It's just such a blindsided attack. And for LeBron, he doesn't need to answer to Phil Jackson. I mean, his reputation is well established in the NBA at this point. I think he, the third title and getting the first one in Cleveland really kind of put a bow on his entire career, where he doesn't really have to answer these kinds of questions about how he conducted himself earlier in his career or anything else. So it'd be almost like if LeBron came out and started questioning Phil Jackson's moves. Why did he make one of the worst trades of the summer, getting Derrick Rose? Why did he make one of the worst free agent signings of the summer, getting Joakim Noah? Why did he put his team together in such a strange way? Why are they below 500? I mean, LeBron would never kind of step out of turn to say those kinds of things about the Knicks, and I think he's probably feeling like, what's Phil Jackson even doing here?
All right, let's turn back to the court. Cavs are looking to separate themselves from the pack in the East. Is there a team in this Eastern Conference you believe that can give them any kind of trouble?
This is still Cleveland's conference, no question about it. But they got a nice push, I thought, on Tuesday night from the Toronto Raptors. you look at Toronto, they're trying to put it together with their guards, Kyle Lowry, DeMar DeRozan. I mean, those guys are established all-stars, and they're trying to push Cleveland that way. I didn't think they had enough inside to kind of keep up with Cleveland's attacks into the perimeter, into the interior, rather, whether it was LeBron, Kyrie off the dribble, Tristan Thompson. But I think it's an interesting matchup because Toronto can really put points up, and they've been together. They've got the continuity that you need to compete with a championship team like Cleveland. I just think if we're looking at the pecking order in the East now, it's sort of Cleveland by themselves, Toronto in that number 2 spot, and then everybody else. And, Cleveland's 2-0 so far against Toronto, but I'm sure the Raptors have that next game against the Cavaliers already circled on their schedule.
Of course, there's a little more depth out west. James Harden, Russell Westbrook have been putting up video game type numbers so far this season. The two superstars going to face off tonight in OKC. Which player out of those two has impressed you the most?
I think Harden's probably got the better numbers right now, but I'm going to go with Russell Westbrook, mostly because of how he's stabilized that franchise in the wake of Kevin Durant's departure. I thought their season could have gone a lot of different ways. I expected Westbrook to be fantastic individually, but I did wonder, how's that going to carry over to the team concept? They started off very hot. They scored some really nice, impressive early victories. Since then, they've cooled off a little bit. But I think the major point from the Thunder's early season is it hasn't been a total collapse. And I really give the credit for that to Westbrook to kind of show them that they should have hope, that this new version of the Thunder can work and can be competitive. And, of course, he's put up outrageous stats, too, just like Harden. So I just think it's harder to move past losing a guy like Kevin Durant than it really is for Houston, say, to move past losing a guy like Dwight Howard. He never really fit there. Stylistically, it made sense for them to just kind of part ways with him and go forward under Mike D'Antoni. So to me, I give the nod to Westbrook for managing slightly choppier waters.
You mentioned Durant. Let's talk about Golden State. The rumors are out there circulating that the Warriors may be looking to trade Klay Thompson. Maybe breaking up the Splash Brothers would be a huge move here. How likely do you think that move is to happen?
I don't see it, and frankly, I hate that kind of talk already. They've been pretty good. I mean, this wasn't the Miami Heat struggling out of the gate that first season under the Big Three, where there was some legitimate questions like, are these core pieces going to be able to mesh? I don't think Golden State has really hit sixth gear yet. I don't think that we've seen their peak play, but they've been very, very, very good. I think we've seen Durant settle in nicely. Steph Curry set the three-point record not too long ago, 13 threes in one game. And I think people are kind of picking on Klay Thompson just because he's had a slow shooting start and maybe he's not quite into rhythm. I think that team can still work. And I think when they're lining up against the other best teams in the West, whether it's the Clippers, the San Antonio Spurs, or even a potential finals matchup against Cleveland, they really need what Klay Thompson brings to the table. He's not some expendable piece. So I don't see any situation where they look to trade him.
So the Splash Brothers remain intact, according to Ben Golliver. Ben, thanks so much for being with us, man.
Thanks, Ryan.
Well, in the NFL, the biggest soap opera so far this season has been in Dallas, where the league's hottest quarterback controversy has now been extinguished. Dak Prescott is entrenched at the starting QB spot, while Tony Romo yesterday said he's accepted the fact that he is now the backup for the Dallas Cowboys. For more on the Dak-Romo saga, here's Sports Illustrated executive editor and senior writer John Wertheim.
In these divisive times, here's a source of unity and consensus. The Dallas Cowboys have a new leader. Not just now, not just for this season. This man is the team's gravitational center for the foreseeable future. Get used to it, a new era is upon us. This man has won the popular vote, but he's earned it too with his performance. He's demonstrated fitness for the position with firm guidance, with wise judgment, with an impressive battery of skills, and with an ability to improvise, but also an ability to stick to a plan. He's earned the trust of those he's been asked to serve. He has the necessary temperament. He's made America's team great again. Where does this leave the figure previously in the position? Well, good question. First, it must be said, his past years of service are appreciated, and he's been most gracious in his concession.
He's earned the right to be our quarterback.
But if we're being honest, he was always a bit of a flawed candidate. He's not getting any younger, and his health has been a question mark for a while now. He may be able to find a new leadership position elsewhere in the private sector, but it sure seems like his window is past. The pundits and the numbers people and the scouts didn't see this coming. Throughout this fall, many have doubted the legitimacy of this outsider candidate. Yet the results speak for themselves. In this closely observed race, Dak Prescott has emerged as the winner, and we the people accept the outcome.
Now, this week's cover story in Sports Illustrated features a special report on football in America. Our Maggie Gray recently talked with one of the writers of that report, Greg Bishop, who explains, just like politics, the current state of football and its future in America is complicated.
Greg, you and Michael McKnight crisscross the entire United States, interviewing people who has football touched their life in some way. Can you describe the range and variety of people you spoke to?
Yeah, the scope of the project was really we wanted to talk to as wide a range of people as possible. So, you know, we interviewed Jerry Jones, we interviewed Roger Goodell, we interviewed Dr. James Andrews, but we also interviewed a woman cooking brisket at a youth game in San Antonio. I talked to a veterinarian who blogs about Nebraska football, and so there were all these different sort of opinions that pointed at the same thing. You know, we were probably at 15 games or so we did some JUCO games, some youth games, some high school games, some college games, some NFL games, and what we wanted to do is for the story not to feel like we'd picked a couple people or we were just looking at the NFL. We wanted to show how football reaches into all facets of America and all parts of American life.
Yeah, you said it all pointed to one thing. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from reading the piece, it seems like that one thing is conflict. People are not sure how to feel about football right now.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely what happened. I didn't expect when I went out there that people would all be feeling like they were wrestling with football, whether they should like it, if they're going to watch it anymore, if they think that the media has overplayed concussions, if they have decided that the world has gone soft. And everybody that we talked to almost universally was basically looking at football and thinking that right now we're having a moment, you know, that things are changing, that they feel differently about the game than they did, say, 2 years ago or 5 years ago or even a year ago. And, you know, I think that it was mainly that people are angry. You know, there's a lot of angst out there, and I talked to a lot of people that sort of felt like they feel like football's changing too much, that they've taken the game and taken what they loved out of it. And what they loved most, I mean, the thing that people kept coming back to over and over and over again was the violence, the hits, the concussions. And so to me, that's an interesting problem for the NFL, right? Because here you have this game that's inherently violent and you're trying your best to make it safer, and you've taken a ton of PR hits over the years for not moving fast enough in that regard. And then you do some things and you change the game a little bit and you make it safer, and the people that watch it say, well, I want the other product. I don't want this one.
So whether you think football is too violent or not violent enough, there have been some who have forecasted that the end of football is near. What did you find from being out on the road?
You know, we saw a lot of people with varied opinions on that. I would say that most people that we spoke with, definitely the majority, felt like football will survive in some form for the foreseeable future. Some of them think that it'll look different. You know, they think that at different levels, you know, maybe tackle football will be at a higher age. Maybe most of the youth sports will be flag. Maybe fewer high school and college kids will play because of what we know about head injuries and player safety and concussions. We did encounter a few people that felt the opposite. They think they could see a future where people, you know, ultimately decide that they don't think the game is safe enough, that they don't want their kids to play. We've seen already declining youth participation numbers. We've seen TV numbers are down for the NFL this year. And so I think if there are enough of these factors, it could look more different than we think in the future.
Did you find that people said they are tuning out?
Yeah, it was really interesting. You know, people always said that they were tuning out of whatever it was they didn't like. So if we were at NFL games, they said the college game has become too commercialized and that the athletes aren't really students. If we were at college games, they said the NFL is big business and that they wish that, you know, they don't watch the NFL because it's not pure like their sport. You know, all those guys say that the youth game has too many parents who are too intense, and the youth parents say that their sport is the most purest form of football. And so I think it really bent along those lines. Like if you loved football, if your kids were out playing, if your kid was in college and he was playing, if you knew an NFL player, you loved that form of football, but you saw the cracks elsewhere. And that to me indicated also that there were quite a few people wrestling with quite a few issues.
So forecast for us after seeing what you have and going all through almost every state in the country and talking with people, what is the future of football?
You know, I think what you will see is that it will start to change a little bit. I think you're going to see that, you know, the numbers of, you know, I talked to this kid at Kansas who had retired from concussions, Jordan Shelley Smith, and he said that he didn't want to retire, but he had to make a pragmatic decision based on the information that was available to him. I think you'll see more of that. You know, a guy at a school that has a losing record, that knows he's probably not going to play in the NFL, it has a concussion and decides, hey, this isn't the smartest thing for my future, even though he loved the game so much that he cried when we talked about it. You know, I think you'll see more high school kids playing soccer. I talked to Steve Smith Sr.'s son, who's a soccer player at DePaul. You know, he doesn't hate football, but he'd made another choice. I think you'll see more of that. But I think the money that's involved in football, the gambling, the fantasy football aspect of it, I think it makes the game itself just so big, almost a few people said to us, too big to fail. And so I think there will, in some form or fashion, you know, be football as it resembles it, at least in the foreseeable future.
Greg Bishop, congrats on this massive undertaking. You and Michael McKnight all over our great country finding out what football means to people. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Maggie.
And that's going to do it for this Wednesday edition of SI Now. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern when I'll be joined by the coach of the University of Kentucky Wildcats. John Calipari will be in studio. Until then, stick with SI.com. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SI Now Live. Have a great afternoon.